Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate it. I also love it when people leave comments, so feel free to leave a comment if you'd like. I have seen some really cool rings online where the claws holding the stone in place, or at least appearing to hold the stone in place, look like actual talons, and so I'm going to try and do something like that today. I'm not sure if I'll be able to pull it off, but we're going to give it a try. Before we do that, though, the first group I'd like to thank are my patrons, and I have two new ones. I have Jolie and Sandra. So thank you, Sandra and Jolie, for signing up. I appreciate your patronage. And thank you to all my other patrons too, not only for the financial support, but for creating such a great community over there. I'm really proud of you, and I think you're an amazing group, so thanks for that. My other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just recently passed 13,200, which is awesome. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you as a subscriber, but I wanted to thank the ones who already have. So thank you for your support. Some of the comments I get are some amazingly kind comments, and I appreciate that. I also do appreciate the financial contributions like the super thanks and the buy me a coffee. Those things really help keep me doing this because metals have gone up so much lately. So thanks for that, it helps. All right, well, let's get started on this claw ring. We'll see how it turns out. This is one of my newer design idea books. I like these ones because they have a conversion chart on the back. This one is from fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters. So if you have trouble converting those in your head, then it's got a nice chart for you. There's a couple of other ones with also other useful information on my merch store if you're so inclined. The reason I have these is because I have found in recent years if I sketch something up in advance, I usually end up with a better outcome. Because I'm not terribly good at drawing. These have a nice dot matrix in the background that you can use as kind of graph paper, but it's not so intrusive. So I really like them, and they're available, like I said, on my merch store. Today I'm going to do, like I said, a dragon claw thing. I've seen a number of similar rings like this online, and I thought I'd give it a try myself. What I'm going to do is I'll probably make these first, and I think I'm going to use 8-gauge half round, and then I'm going to use my file to actually sculpt these kind of. And then for the band itself, I'm going to use 18-gauge sheet. I've measured out, this is actually 72 millimeters because I was trying to go for, I don't remember what size it was, a 10.5 or an 11 or something like that. But that'll be how big I cut that piece. For the bezel for the stone, and for the stone, since it's kind of looking like dragon claws, I got something sort of psychedelic looking. It's a Mexican opal, and it's got some interesting colors inside of it. It's one of those window opals with a matrix around it. So it's kind of weird looking, and I think that'll make for a cool stone for claws going over it. So for the bezel for that, I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip, which is going to be 26 gauge. I believe 26 is 0.41 millimeters thick. 3/16 inch height is 4.76 millimeters, I believe. Yeah, 4.76 millimeters. And I'll file that down to whatever height I need. I want to keep it at that height because we're actually going to solder the bezel on after we make the band round. So we'll have to shape the bottom to match it. And then we'll file it down as low as we can get by with. Truly, I really only need it to kind of be a frame for this because I think the prongs themselves are going to be, holding it in place. At least in theory, if I can do this. We'll give it a try either way, but let's start by getting some 8-gauge half round and we'll file these. I'll probably file one in front of you and then I'll do the rest off camera because it's going to take a while. Okay, I'm going to start by filing the end flat. And I think For these claws, they don't need to be very far back. I'm going to have them start about right there. So I'm going to file kind of a notch right around that to give me kind of a where that knuckle that comes before the claw itself is going to be. And then I'm just going to file this to a point. I'm going to put one of these on because my fingers are a little trashed right now. You can, of course, brace this on something if you like. Filing it thinner in both dimensions, so I'm leaving the bottom flat. You could use round wire for this probably, but since I'm going to be soldering it to a piece of sheet anyway, I might get a nicer solder joint. Okay, I think I got kind of a claw sticking out of there, so I need them to be, at least that long, so I'm going to maybe make a mark about there and we'll see how far we need to go. But I'm just going to make a series of notches across the top, and then I'll extend those notches with my bigger file around the outside. So find my little file. Just like that. Kind of lining up what looks to me like the edge of the file from my angle along the first little notch there. So I'll do the same thing each time. I should get it pretty consistent. I don't actually care if it's a little inconsistent because it's supposed to look like the toe of a dragon or something. Made it a little bit longer than needed. So, I'm going to use the bigger file here now. I'm going to kind of extend these notches around the side like that. Let's try and go the other side. You could probably do this with a diamond bar too if you wanted to, I suppose. Faster. Now we're going to spend some time making those trenches a little bit deeper. Alright, that's probably good enough. So I'm going to go off camera and make 5 more of these, and then I'll be back and we'll start doing something with them. I remembered we need to make a bezel for this stone, so let's do that next. This is some 26 gauge, or I think it was 0.41 millimeters thick. Scratch where these two cross over, leaving yourself a little bit of extra room. I did a terrible job of filing that straight. Maybe it's one of those days I should be using my miter vise jig. Alright, if you've never been to my channel before, I use pretty much hard silver sheet solder, which looks like this, and a liquid flux that I dribble on generally, or I spray on occasionally. My torch is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch. And it's a great torch. I use a #1 tip, and that's most of the questions people ask me. If you're a silversmith, what kind of torch do you use? I'm curious. I'm always curious how people do things. It's one of the cool things about silversmithing I found is most people do things slightly different from each other, and that's what makes it kind of cool. Sometimes you learn some really cool, good tips from people that you never thought of. You run into people now and again who are really rigid about how to do things, and that's okay, but it's been my experience that the way I was taught is not always the best way. All sorts of times I've found better ways to do things. So just kind of go with the things that work the best for you. And try and learn from your mistakes. Sometimes it's hard to let go of something you've been doing for a long time, even when you find a better way, because you've developed some sort of emotional attachment to a particular technique or something, which is sort of funny if you think about it. Okay, let's reshape this. Good example of that is I've been spraying on flux for years, and numerous people since I started the channel have said, why don't you get an eyedropper? And I kept putting it off and putting it off, and finally one of my YouTube subscribers, who's a talented metalsmith herself, sent me one. I've been using it nonstop ever since. So sometimes you just got to take the step and try something new and see how it works. As 30 years of metalsmithing, I would have appreciated having known that, you know, as an effective way, but I had some sort of weird thing about spraying on flux. I've gotten so many good ideas from people from this YouTube channel. I've improved as a metalsmith more over the past couple of years than I did in 30 years of doing this, mostly because people suggest things to me, or I've been willing to try different things in order to accomplish different things that I'd never tried before, because the YouTube channel kind of forces me to make new stuff all the time that I've never tried, which is good. But yeah, I really feel like I've grown as a metalsmith over the past 2-3 years quite a bit. So I'm much less afraid to try something I was intimidated by in the past. So, I mean, honestly, what's the worst thing that could happen? It doesn't work once or twice until you get the hang of it. So it's okay. I think that's pretty good on size and shape, so I'm going to leave that be for now. And we need to cut out our piece of 18 gauge sheet, and I have just about enough here. I'm not looking forward to having to replace my sheet of 18 because of the expense of metal right now. But what are you going to do? Okay, so I usually use the stone to kind of dictate the width. So let's see. Where did I need something to scratch with again? The last T-pin I had wasn't very sharp. I don't want much space on either side, honestly. Just maybe a skosh. Like that. I think what I'll do then is I'll cut this off so I have a nice straight line. And give this a little file up. Alright, and that's where we measured to from this edge. So the easiest way to get a straight line would probably be to use these. Let's find the center of this. Okay. So I've got the center point going this way. Now I want these to taper inwards like that. So I need to decide how far in I want to go from each side. Right now these are pretty close to 20 millimeters. So I think we need to come in about halfway. We'll see how that looks. We just scribe
scribe from here to there. Get these as symmetrical as I can. So it goes from, it's about that wide at the base here. Let's go with that. I'm going to cut out the whole thing and then we'll trim off those corners. Okay, so make sure that's still how I was planning. So yeah, that's plenty wide. So basically, after we get this shaped into a circle and the bezel soldered on and filed down pretty low, I'm going to solder these 3 on each side. I think I'm going to curve in the outer ones just a little bit so they're kind of like doing that. But we'll see. And then we'll kind of smooth the base. I'll decide how long I really want them to be. I kind of made them longer than I figured I needed. So let's get this all filed up and then we'll solder it into a band, shape it, and then we'll add the bezel, and then we'll start doing that other stuff. So. Lined up pretty well. Solder in. Probably have enough solder there, so usually solder these from both sides just to make sure I have full crack penetration. Years ago when I first started doing this, I sold a ring one time, and it was one of these wide band sorts of rings, and the bottom when it soldered together broke on the person who bought it. And so ever since then I've been super careful to make sure I've got a good solid solder joint there. So what I'm doing may not be necessary, but it makes me feel better. I just was embarrassed about that and I didn't want that to happen again. There you go, flying shaft. That's the first time I've used this. It looks handy. Thank you for that. Okay, I might pickle this for a little while to get it cleaned up a bit before we solder on that bezel. But in the meantime, while that's pickling, I need to shape the bottom of this bezel so it fits that band, the curve of the band like that. See, so I'm going to have to basically, first off, find the very end like that. And on each of these ends we're going to kind of create kind of a curve to match that curve, I'm going to carve that away. I usually just use my Dremel with a burr or with an abrasive wheel. Just grind that away. And the bezel kind of becomes saddle shaped, I guess would be the term. But you want it to where it sits on the band and solders together nicely. So while this is cleaning up, I'm going to play with the Dremel, grinding that away until it fits on there nicely, and then we'll solder it on. So. Okay, a couple of things I did. I went ahead and I shaped the bottom of the bezel so it's kind of saddle shaped like that. It fits pretty nicely on there. So I'll get that lined up, centered kind of where I want it. The two outer talons on either side I bent slightly inwards at the top, and I used my Opal making pliers and I kind of bent them around this bigger part there. And I may adjust them as I start placing them on here, but first let's solder this bezel on. The thing to remember when doing one of these is there's a whole bunch of mass in that third hand, as well as the band itself compared to the bezel. So most of the heat needs to be pumped into the lower part where the band is. That's pretty good. So let's chuck a bunch of chowder. Let's place a whole slew of solder on the inside of this. Apparently I can't say chuck a bunch of solder. It's like she sells seashells down by the seashore. Take a moment and inspect my solder joint to make sure I have a clean seam all the way around. And so I can file that down quite a bit, so I'm going to do that next. And let's just do that. Sit like that. I want these guys to just kind of like go over the top there, so I'm going to make a mark, I think, just to help me get this lined up where I want it to be, where this thing crosses that bezel. Now I need to get these to sit like that. But also kind of match the curve of this thing, so. Still raised up a little bit there, but other than that I like it. That's pretty close. I think the easiest way to get this soldered on here is to sweat a little solder on the underside of this thing. So put that over there for the moment. I have plenty of solder here, so we sweat it on here, we'll have less overflow anywhere. Just, I don't want to have a lot of sloppy solder that I want to have to clean up. So I think that's done, except for doing some cleanup to where they taper into the band a little bit, and I'll do that using my rotary tool and probably a white abrasive wheel and maybe some other tips, but it's just going to be some fading it into the sheet after it's pickled for a while. And then I'll polish it, and then we'll put that stone in there, so then we'll be done. So I've got the stone in there, and I've actually laid down 4 of the prongs so I can hold it in place. These last 2 I'm going to kind of put down in front of you, and we're going to be using the flat side of this. Push it down. And then we'll kind of do the same thing on this one. So that's the basic view. Oops. Got a claw ring now. I might do a little straightening here since some of these are pointing slightly different directions. So then I'm just going to do a little cleanup, and I'll take some better pictures at the end. Okay, well that was the claw ring. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. Also, take a few moments and check out some of my playlists and my main channel page, because I have
over 350 videos. So there's tons of content there, and I'm sure that you can find some other ones you'd be interested in. So whether you're a beginner, somewhere in the middle, or advanced, there might be some things that would help you out here. So check them out. Give me a subscribe, and don't forget to hit the video description as well, because there's some important links down there. Some of the links that you'll find there are the link to my ebook if you want to check that out. That's a good guide to take you right to a whole bunch of fun video projects. If you want to get yourself one of those design idea books, there's a link to my merch store there. There's a link to Patreon if you want to find out more about that community, as well as a few other important links. So check those out and come back to visit. Thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.